Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabiyari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Okay, everyone together.
Narayana Namaskritya Namaskritya Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayam Viraye Nastapraesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatu Nasloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki.
Okay, translation. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is very easy, one should offer respectful obeisances to the personality of God. And to Srila Vyasadeva. By regular attendance in classes on Bhagavatam, and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service unto the personality of Godhead, whose praise of transcendental songs is established as irrevocable fact. Om Jnanatimirandasya Ginanjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Panchakalpa Truvascha Kripa Sindhuveva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai, welcome to another installment of Srimad Bhagavatam class. Thank you so much for coming. So, what did we hear yesterday? Anyone just want to quickly give us like a 1 or 2 sentence recap what happened in Radhika's class? What were we reading about? Yes?
What I remember from last class was kind of like just I think I kind of remember the part where we talked about like how to deal with I think that might have been the class before yesterday that we like talked about. I don't know if it was yesterday or before yesterday. We talked about how to deal with how to deal with other people like a little bit more smoothly.
Okay. But I'm specifically wondering, in a narrative sense, like the actual verse to verse, what was happening yesterday? I want to see if anyone can tell us. Talking about Shukadeva and Parikshit, right? And they were speaking about Shukadeva Goswami. He seemed, from an external perspective, not to be quite so, well, special or transcendental, but he actually was.
And how was it that the two of them came to connect with each other? All these kind of questions were asked. Basically, the sages were trying to figure out, how did this text come about? And they said, we know that you're the expert. They're speaking the Sutta. We know that you're expert in all these Vedic subjects. So we know that you can answer these questions that we've put before you. But now, Sutta Goswami all of a sudden is going to start speaking about Vyasadeva. Because he was asked about this Bhagavatam text. You can't speak about the Bhagavatam without speaking about Vyasadeva, who is the first one who really compiled this Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's what we're going to see today. I think we're starting from 14, yeah? So, I don't know, maybe with Chris or someone we can start. If you have a mic. Mic over there. So, we're just going to read up until 17 and 18.
Sutta Goswami said, when the second millennium overlapped the third, the great sage Vyasadeva was born to Parashara in the womb of Satyavati, the daughter of Vasu.
Once upon a time, he, Vyasadeva, as the sun rose, took his morning ablution in the waters of the Saraswati and sat alone to concentrate.
The great sage Vyasadeva saw anomalies in the duties of the millennium. This happens on the earth in different ages due to the unseen force of time.
The great sage, who was fully equipped in knowledge, could see through his transcendental vision the deterioration of everything material due to the influence of the age. He could also see that the faithless people in general would be reduced in duration of life and would be impatient due to lack of goodness. Thus, he contemplated for the welfare of men in all statuses and orders of life.
Okay, so we're going to dive into the purport here. So the great sage could see the difficult times coming. Let's see a further explanation of that. Maybe we could just keep going with Kiara, and you can read the purport for us. Just one paragraph, maybe, I guess, and then the next person.
The unmanifested forces of time are so powerful that they reduce all matter to oblivion in due course. In Kali Yuga, the last millennium of a round of 4 millenniums, the power of all material objects deteriorates by the influence of time. In this age, the duration of the material body of the people in general is much reduced, and so is the memory. The action of matter has also not so much incentive. The land does not produce food grains in the same proportions as it did in other ages. The cow does not give as much milk as it used to give formerly. The production of vegetables and fruits is less than before. As such, all living beings, both men and animals, do not have sumptuous, nourishing food. Due to want of so many necessities of life, naturally the duration of life is reduced, the memory is short, intelligence is meager, mutual dealings are full of hypocrisy, and so on.
Okay, Gayatri.
The great sage Vyasadeva could see this by his transcendental vision. As an astrologer can see the future fate of a man, or an astronomer can foretell the solar and lunar eclipses, those liberated souls who can see through the scriptures can foretell the future of all mankind. They can see this due to their sharp vision of spiritual attainment.
Maybe Nate, you can do the next very long paragraph.
In all such transcendentalists, naturally devotees of the Lord, are always eager to render welfare service in general. They are the real friends of the people in general, not the so-called public leaders who are unable to see what is going to happen in 5 minutes ahead. In this age, people in general, as well as their so-called leaders, are all unlucky fellows, faithless in spiritual knowledge and influenced by the age of Kali. They are always disturbed by various diseases. For example, in the present age, there are so many TB patients and TB hospitals, but formerly this was not so because the time was not so unfavorable. The unfortunate men of this age are always reluctant to give a reception to the transcendentalists who are the representatives of Srila Vyasadeva and the selfless workers always busy in planning something which may help everyone in all statuses and orders of life. The greatest philanthropists are those transcendentalists who represent the mission of Vyasa, Naradam, Madhav, Chaitanya, Rupa, Saraswati, etc. They are all
Aim. Different. But the aim of the mission is one and the same, namely to deliver the fallen souls back home, back to Godhead.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so up until this point, basically, what we've read is that by the turn of the millennium, things would be degraded, right? Even more so than it was before. And Vyasadeva, he had this transcendental vision. He saw that things were just going to go down. So we just read it. Can someone give me like an example of some symptoms of the age of Kali? Like what are
It said like there would be hypocrisy in like a lot of areas in the society.
Yeah, Vishnu? Short duration of life, yeah. Continue. Yeah. Anything else? Okay. Yeah.
The worst crooks will find their way into politics.
Definitely.
Nate has one.
Impatience, quote, due to lack of goodness.
Okay. Hunter? Bad food.
Yes, that was a good one.
Jonathan?
Canned food. No, but
Amen, brother.
but I think people don't live as long, right?
Yeah.
Short duration.
And bodily luster is lacking.
Yeah.
We look a little pale. Case in point.
What really struck out for me is that cows produce less milk. Yeah, the sad one, right? So basically, just the degradation of everything. Everything is just kind of going, So let's just quickly do a little exercise. Max wasn't here last week. Nate, can you tell me what did we have for breakfast last week Tuesday? Last Tuesday. What did we have for breakfast?
My guess is that it was yellow.
I mean, that's smart. It probably was. Cornbread or
Last
dal
week.
or something.
Okay. No?
Spinach yellow.
Spinach yellow.
Anyone else have any ideas?
Wait, no, continue.
Oh.
Do you have any idea what we had last week Friday?
Oh, last week
No?
Friday.
For breakfast? No, lunch is easy because we have
Yeah,
it every
lunch,
day, right?
not
Every
lunch.
week it's the same.
We don't even remember that.
Last Friday?
Yeah,
Do you
I
remember
guess.
what you cooked? Who remembers what we had for breakfast on Wednesday?
Wait,
This week.
the cook didn't even remember?
This week, Wednesday. Pancakes? I don't remember pancakes this week.
Like savory.
Oh, okay, they
savory
weren't.
pancake.
Okay, that's not. Okay, sure. Like the dal pancake things. Okay, sure.
Tuesday was a pineapple pancake.
Well,
That
pineapple
was the
cornbread.
Yeah.
Pineapple cornbread.
But okay, do you see my point here? Like, our memory is really, really bad, It took us a while to even remember what we had on Wednesday, and we had to rely on Jonathan because he was the one who actually cooked breakfast. So that's the point, that like our memories have just like completely degraded in this age of Kali. And Vyasadeva, he was aware that this was going to happen, So what he did was he simplified things for us, right? He made it easier. I just want to say one thing. So I just wanted to compare, like our memories are really bad compared to how it was back in like Vedic times. In Vedic times, they had like perfect memory, right? Nothing was ever actually written down. Like we're reading here about how Sukadeva Goswami narrated the Bhagavatam. Sutta Goswami narrated the Bhagavatam. No one is writing down the Bhagavatam, They hear and they learn and they internalize. And we have to like write, and then still we have to go over and over and over. And it's like only maybe a percentage of that sinks in. So, yeah.
Yeah, it was a complete oral tradition. Because Sanskrit is also meant to be sung. So it's a language that exists to be orally transmitted. Even today in India, there's one village, I don't know the name, but there's one village where they all speak in Sanskrit. And then from a young age, they all learn to just chant mantras and learn the language like that, not really by writing it down.
All right, so we can continue reading.
We're on number 19 right now, right? 20?
I don't know who was reading.
Maybe Nico has to read
Yeah.
verse 19 for us. Let's see. Okay.
Text 19. He saw that the sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas were means by which the people's occupations could be purified. And to simplify the process, he divided the one Veda into 4 in order to expand them among men.
So I just want to say here, just by this particular text, that in the Vedas, they describe like all these sacrifices and austerities and yagyas and things that they performed. It's not something that we don't do. We do it, but we do such a basic, simplified version of it because we wouldn't be able to do what they did back then, That was just a point that I wanted to make, that it's really hard for us in this age. And that's why Vyasadeva, he divided the Vedas into 4 to make it easier for us.
Basic but the best, yes.
Okay?
Okay.
Is divided into 4 have anything to do with like different actions that people take?
No, it's not directly correlated in that way. No.
That's a good question.
Okay.
Okay, we can continue reading.
Okay. Maybe with number 20.
The 4 divisions of the original sources of knowledge, the Vedas, were made separately, but the historical facts and authentic stories mentioned in the Puranas are all called the 5th Veda.
Keep going, Max.
After the Vedas were divided into 4 divisions, Paila Rishi became the professor of the Rig Veda, Jaimini became the professor of the Sama Veda, and Vaishampayana alone became glorified by the Yagur Veda.
The Shamantu Muni Angira, who was very devotedly engaged, was entrusted with the Atharva Veda, and my father, Romaharshana, was entrusted with the Puranas and historical records.
Remember, it's Sutta speaking, so he's saying his father was entrusted with the Puranas and historical records. Okay.
All these learned scholars, in their turn, rendered their entrusted Vedas into their many disciples, grand disciples, and great grand disciples, and thus the respective branches of the followers of the Vedas came into being.
Okay, we're just going to go up until 25 for now. So 2 more people.
Thus the great sage Vyasadeva, who is very kind to the ignorant masses, edited the Vedas so they might be assimilated by less intellectual men.
Okay, last one.
Out of compassion, the great sage thought it wise that this would enable men to achieve the ultimate goal of life. Thus he compiled the great historical narration called the Mahabharata for women, laborers, and friends of the twice born.
Okay.
So nice.
There for now.
Okay. So yeah, here we learn that Vyasadeva, he simplified the Vedas so that it was easier for us to digest, easier for us to assimilate. And there's like a specific verse here. Yeah, so no. That's the great sage, number 24, Vyasadeva, who is very kind to the ignorant masses, us fallen souls, edited the Vedas so that they might be assimilated for less intellectual men. So he edited to make it simpler, right? And I'm using this word simple, but that doesn't mean that he made it less than. What we're learning now is not less than what they were learning in Vedic times. It's like a more concentrated version, It just gets straight to the roots. It just cuts straight to it. So basically, if you can maybe think of like modifying a car or a bike or something, as Adisham likes to do, if you want it at peak performance, right? You want it to go as fast as it possibly can. You're going to take out all of the things that it doesn't require. I mean, why does the fast car require Bluetooth? You're going to take out all of those unnecessary things. So basically, you're going to take all the fluff out of the car in order for it to be at peak performance. So that's basically what Vyasadeva did with the Vedas. He took out all the fluff that we didn't need, that he understood would be too much for us to deal with, and he left just the most important core assets in there.
Essence.
Yeah, he left the essence, basically. Yeah, the vanilla essence. Okay. So can you think of anyone else who did this, who simplified something for us?
Everyone's pointing in that direction.
Prabhupada, Jai, yeah. So Prabhupada also had that transcendental vision that, you know what, these Westerners, they're going to struggle. Even this easy one that Vyasadeva made for us is like, no, it's still too much for them, it's still too much. And he just simplified it for us, he gave us the Bhagavad Gita as it is without any unnecessary commentaries. He just he gave it straight to the point. He's Srimad Bhagavatam. And then he gave us all of these practical ways in which we can apply it, the morning program, the chanting of japa. And we don't do 64 rounds, we only do 16, So Prabhupada also had that vision, like, okay, you know what? In order for these souls to be liberated, we got to make it easier. But he didn't take away from it, He just got straight down to the essence. He didn't take important things out of what we're practicing. He just made it easier for us to digest.
Quick interruption. Who votes we keep Prabhupada in this part of the temple?
Yeah, right? He's so involved here. It's so nice.
Okay.
So, in the Vedas, they did everything that we do, the deity worship, the yagyas and all of those things, but we do such a simplified version of it. And even for us, that's maybe like a lot, even the simplified version. It's like the deity worship, geez, you have to go through like a whole deity worship course. It's not that easy, but it's still been simplified for us in order for us to obtain liberation. And then in verse 25, it says, out of compassion, the great sage thought it wise that this would enable men to achieve the ultimate goal of life. So him simplifying the Vedas would enable us to achieve the ultimate goal of life. And thus he compiled the great historical narration called the Mahabharata for women, laborers, friends of the twice born. So, how does that make you feel? Yes, Nico.
I feel like just that sentence alone, that first sentence, is like so reassuring, like the Godhead, it's already, we're enabled to come by the greatest Savior.
Yeah. Makes you want to be friends.
Okay, should I?
Yeah, sure.
So, yeah, in this verse, there's a certain distinction drawn between the twice-born and then another category, the friends of the twice-born, the laborers, which are Sudras, and it says the women. Now, we're going to quickly look at this. What does that mean? What is this distinction and why is it drawn? So the twice-born, if I'm not mistaken, are the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas. Those three divisions of the social system in Vedic times. And they underwent an initiation ceremony where they got a sacred thread. Okay, now we're going to quickly go back to verse 13, if you can pull that up. Yeah, of this chapter. Because this distinction is also made there, but in a slightly different way. What does it say there? This is what Nita was asking about. It says, we know that you are expert in the meaning of all subjects, except some portions of the Vedas, and thus you can clearly explain the answers. So Nita was like, why are they telling Sutta, the great sage who was chosen out of 80,000 or something gathered, why are they saying him, you know most of the Vedas, except some portions? What's that all about? So in the purport, maybe you can scroll down a little bit, let's see if we can find it. Yeah, just there. The difference between the Vedas and Puranas is like that between the Brahmanas and the Parivrajaka's. What are Parivrajaka's? Those are like high-level transcendentalists. So it's even more important than Brahmanas. So, okay, now let's go back. Let's think about the verse we just read. So there's the twice-born, and then the other category, friends of the twice-born, etc. Now the twice-born are more linked to the Vedas, right? Whereas the historical narrations are linked to the other category. Does that mean that the Vedas are higher and the Puranas and histories are lower, they're saying Sutta Goswami is expert in most of the Vedas. So they're actually saying, technically, that the Vedas have been overemphasized a little bit. It's not actually that important. And that's the point of this whole section of the chapter we're looking at today, right? So, but now, the next question, can I go into my section?
With regards to that. So they're making this distinction between the twice-born and then the friends of the twice-born and Sudras and women. And is it like what Gopi said, does that mean that one is less than the other? And it's just good to keep in mind that in Vedic times, the twice-born, they were more inclined towards philosophical learning. In Vedic times, it was more karmically organized. Life was more according to your dharma. And women and Sudras and friends of the twice-born, they weren't really into philosophy. It's different now. Now we're not quite so designated by our bodily functions. We are not told that we cannot perform certain things because of our bodily designations. So it's a little bit different. And Vyasadeva, he compiled it with that in knowledge, with that in mind, knowing that everyone would need to practice this in order to be liberated.
Nita has a question, or Adishama has a question? Mike?
Well, Prabhupada was first preaching in the West. He started giving initiations to men and women, including seconds. And he got criticized a lot by his godbrothers. And they, at some point, they met him and they said, what are you doing? You're initiating, men and women? It's in the West. He's like, men and women, I don't do that. He's like, what do you mean? What about New York? He's like, oh, there's no men and women, they're all animals. So nobody should feel
I thought I was going to go the other way. That they're all wow. Okay, we only have a few minutes left. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Just real quick, that I appreciated what you said about the certain people that twice born were more inclined to the ritualistic activities and more philosophical understanding. So they just had the Vedas contain those things. But they consider probably certain class of people who are not inclined. Maybe they also want to get to the transcendental stage, but it's easy for them to go through stories and historical narrations.
Yes.
So that's why he made it Mahabharata, because we can read Mahabharata and through the stories we can learn.
When we speak about the twice-born that are mentioned there and how they were more absorbed in and born into and inclined to philosophical, spiritual lifestyle, you have to understand that is talking about a very thorough system. In text 13 that we looked at briefly, in that purport it explains that they had to learn mantras that you have to pronounce in the exact meters for it to be effective. So it's like a spiritual lifestyle, but it's like doing 3 PhDs, you could say, in a row. Your whole life, you just have to study and do everything perfectly. So it wasn't that easy. It wasn't actually that accessible for everyone. Yeah. Okay, we only have a few minutes left, but we still have to read a few verses. So now, we'll take some questions at the end. So Vyasadeva has set out to make things more accessible for us in Kali Yuga. What does it sound like so far? Do you think he's been successful? Any thoughts? Yeah?
Yeah, up until text 25. Do you think he's satisfied with what he's
divided the Vedas. He's also set up the Mahabharata for those who are more inclined to narrations than logic and philosophy, very intense logic and philosophy. So, surely he's happy, right? No? Drew says no. Kunti's kind of laughing. Varsika Prabhu?
So the everything that he's done so far, he winds up finding out deal basically with the material form of life and not spiritual life.
Yes.
And so he's very unsatisfied because material life is not satisfying.
Something's wrong, yes. In text 19, it actually said, he saw that the sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas were means by which the people's occupations could be purified. So, purifying your occupation, that's like a very gradual, slow process. and it's not really cutting to the chase. So I'm going to quickly read a few verses for us, starting with 26. Okay, sorry. Where were we when we were reading last? Was Carmen maybe?
So Rasika Prabhu, can you?
Okay, yeah, you can do from 26 and then we keep going.
O twice-born Brahmanas, still his mind was not satisfied, although he engaged himself in working for the total welfare of all people.
Okay, 27. Goes to the mind.
Thus the sage, being dissatisfied at heart, at once began to reflect, because he knew the essence of religion, and he said within himself,
I have, under strict disciplinary vows, unpretentiously worshipped the Vedas, the spiritual masters, and the altar of sacrifice. I've also abided by the rulings and have shown the import of disciplic succession through the explanation of Mahabharata, by which even women, Shudras, and others, friends of the twice-born, can see the path of religion.
Okay, so this is Vyasadeva, like speaking to himself. I am feeling incomplete, though I myself am fully equipped with everything required by the Vedas. This may be because I did not specifically point out the devotional service of the Lord, which is dear both to perfect beings and to the infallible Lord.
As mentioned before, Narada reached the cottage of Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa on the banks of the Sarasvati just as Vyasadeva was regretting his defects. So his spiritual master appears. And at the auspicious arrival of Shri Narada, Shri Vyasadeva got up respectfully and worshipped him, giving him veneration equal to that given to Brahmaji, the creator. So Vyasadeva kind of realized, I didn't speak about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his pastimes and his qualities and all of that. Okay, so basically, in order to achieve success, we need to set out in the right direction. He kind of didn't set out in the right direction. And that's why he felt dissatisfied. Now you have to understand, the Vedas are kind of like, what do you call those? Choose your own adventure? Those books where turn to page this if you want to do this. Turn to page that if you want to turn right or go into the door. The Vedas are like that. It accommodates our free will. And most of the Vedas are full of what's called karma kanda, these sacrifices and things that gradually elevate you. But we kind of get lost in that. It can be so dangerous because the human form of life is so valuable. It's so rare. So you shouldn't gamble. You shouldn't waste time. You shouldn't take risks. If you follow that ritualistic side of the Vedas, do you all know the game Snakes and Ladders? Yeah? You're kind of rolling the dice to make some progress. And sometimes, you hit a ladder, you go up. Yay. Sometimes you hit a snake and you might go all the way back down to the start. That's kind of what the ritualistic sections of the Vedas are like. Okay, I want a better life in the next life, but while you're aiming for that, you're actually enmeshed in a web of karma. You're doing this, which influences that person in this way, and you're participating in a society which is full of this sin and that sin. It's like, just think about how we're enmeshed right now. You know, we're using electricity. Maybe it comes from a coal plant, which is causing pollution. Or, we're eating some food that we bought from Publix that was farmed on an industrial level. So there's probably insecticides, pesticides. They probably cleared some forest, probably killed some lizards and insects or whatever. The point is, we're like really enmeshed. So do you want to play that karmic game? It's going to be very difficult to remove that web and get out of that, let's say, spider's lair. Devotional service and direct connection with the Lord, however, like she said, it's like if you have a race car, you take out some of the seats, you take out the carpeting, you make it light, and it just goes straight for the finish line, right? Let's see. So I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to show you one verse from the next chapter. Sorry to whoever is the speaker on Monday. but they won't mind because this verse is so special that you should all hear it twice or more times. In fact, I hope this verse stays in your memory until your next life, and the next life, and the one after that. Which one is it though? It's text 10 from the next chapter. So Narada Muni is speaking there, and he's just confirming what Vyasadeva had felt. Listen to this. Those words which do not describe the glories of the Lord, who alone can sanctify the atmosphere of the whole universe, are considered by saintly persons to be like unto a place of pilgrimage for crows. So words or literatures or texts that are not describing the glories of the Lord, it's like a place of pilgrimage for crows. Where do crows gather? Dead things. Not a very flattering simile. So God and knowledge of God, knowledge of our relationship with God. Now the final thing I'll say is why always God? We might think like that. Well, currently we're in this material world with so many limitations, which is like a prison. Why do people end up in a prison? They break the law. They don't play nice. Basically. Now, if you have a relationship with God, it's explained that that's like watering the root. It could sound like, why all the energy on God? Is God a narcissist? But it's not that it's just God isolated. Have you all heard of this phrase, watering the root? Service to Krishna is like watering the root of a plant. You pour your energy into Krishna, and the energy immediately, automatically expands to all different parts of the plant, to all the branches, all the leaves. So if you really want to basically learn how to love anything, anyone, it's through your relationship with Krishna that you can do that for others and, be there for others, basically. So if you're in a prison, last thing I'll say, I think I watched the video, I think it was Finland. Those Scandinavian countries, if you don't know, they're very progressive. So there was a guy who was in prison for murder, but he could come and go out of the prison as he pleased. He had his own car provided for him. He went to university classes, then came back. So basically, he was learning how to integrate with society. So we're learning how to integrate with God and God's system, basically. So that's why we have to learn about God, learn about his pastimes, so that we have a desire to build that relationship. And that's why Vyasadeva felt dissatisfied, because he realized he was telling the prisoners, he was giving them knowledge that basically just kept them in the prison, kept them interested in the things going on in the prison, instead of interested in the whole society that's outside of the prison, right? Okay, we'll end there. And I think we have time for some questions and comments. Your hands are up at the exact same time. Let's just go with the elder, senior member, Rasika.
So it's kind of like the Vedas are there so that while we are still on the track of wanting to enjoy, we're able to do so safely, right, without descending down into more and more hellish, right, forms of life. But eventually you become materially exhausted and you realize none of this is making me happy. Right. Now you're ready to actually inquire about the Supreme Lord.
Right. I guess you could say that in previous ages it was safer to follow that step-by-step process. But in Kali Yuga, can you imagine if we had to try and, follow all these different parts of the Vedas? Like we have a text which Sanatana Goswami wrote, the Hari Bhakti Vilas. And if you were to follow everything that's recommended there, it would probably take you about 2 hours to leave your room after waking up, because you have to do this and do that, and then bathe in this way, and then offer, obeisances to the earth, and then offer obeisances to all your different mothers, and you know what I mean? It's like, it's just not going to work in Kali Yuga. It's no time, we're disturbed, we need the essence, and we need it now. Meet, you also had your hand up.
I just have a comment on Nitai's query when he was like, why did they sages of Naimisharanya said, you are expert in some of the Vedas to Sutta Goswami.
Yeah.
So
Except some other parts.
Except some other parts, yes. So Sutta Goswami is not incapable of anything because he was personally empowered by Lord Balaram. Because even though we see in text 22, it says Romaharshana was entrusted with the Puranas and historical records. Now Romaharshana is the father of Sutta Goswami. He was entrusted with that. But still Lord Balaram killed Romaharshana on the Vyasasan because he was prideful. He didn't stood up to pay obeisances to Balaram when he visited the forest. So after killing Romaharshana, he personally empowered Sutta Goswami. And when Lord Balaram empowers Sutta Goswami with the same energy, where energy and all the power and all knowledge which Romaharshana was carrying, and he empowered with all Puranas and historical records at the same time. And because of that, when Puranas are included, the meter and everything is included. But just in the context of Parivrajagacharya is a term meant for the preachers. So because of that context, the sages of Naimisharanya are asking Sutta Goswami that you are expert in some of that. So it doesn't literally mean he's incapable of other things. Yeah.
Yes, another way of looking at it is they're commenting on what his preference is, not his skill set, but just this is the section that you are expert in, meaning this is the section that you really relish and like to share.
Yeah. Thank you for a beautiful class.
Advaita Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. When we were discussing about how things are simplified, starting from Vyasadeva and our most prominent representative, Srila Prabhupada, in the modern world, I was thinking also not to forget a personality that sits on the altar here. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Nimai Pandit, who also simplified upon meeting his spiritual master in Gaya and upon receiving initiation. Although he was a supreme scholar of the area, Nimai Pandit, the topmost Pandit, nobody could, he knew Vedas left and right. Nobody could even come close, but he just renounced all that, saying that my spiritual master considered me to be a fool. So therefore, Kirtaniya Sadahari, simply chant.
Sham Jr. actually likes to bring that up. He also says, we're all so stupid, just chant your japa. He makes reference to Lord Chaitanya saying that.
Everything is so simplified. In terms of memory, when we incessantly chant Hare Krishna, that is something that happens, and that is spiritual awakening. Our remembrance comes back. And there's really no other way. No other way. No other way.
Thank you, Baba. Maybe one more question or comment, otherwise we'll just end there. Yes, Sham Prabhu.
Tulasy was speaking about the essence and the urgency. One example came to mind, somewhat relevant to our modern times. In a war in Ukraine, they are giving them those high-end jets, but they're going to train the pilots in a very short period of time. So even though it usually takes years and years and years to be able to operate those things, but it's the urgency, and it's the war, and it's the urgency. So we are given the essence, we're given chanting, because we are in a situation where we have a limited lifespan, and we're in a very difficult situation in Kali Yuga. So we're given the essence for that, short version.